Hey everyone, welcome to week 36, day 4. This is Thursday, our instead of white week. We've replaced it with Latin yellow, bismuth yellow, weird green that I forgot its name from yesterday, sorry. And today we're going to change a little bit of those hues, those very analogous hues that we've worked with the past 3 days. We're going to change it up a little bit. We're going towards the blues. So we're going to use a King's Blue, and we'll see how we do.
Okay, let's get started. Now this is going to be day 4 of our ongoing Instead of White week. And I think we've taken some pretty cool steps along the way. We started out with a very simple, very subtle change just by trying to replace the white. Remember, we can't really replace the white. We are just putting another color in its place so that we think about the use that we give to white. That is the purpose of this week. It's not just to say, instead of white, I'm going to use X color. No, because that other color can't really do what white can do. But because it can't really do what white can do, it's going to make us reflect upon the use that we give to white. So that is the core of the issue that we're dealing with during this week. So we didn't stray too far off with Monday's color. That lead tin yellow is actually very, very close to lead white. So it is within its nature to be congruous with the use that we would give to a white. For Tuesday, even though those two colors kind of seem similar, I was watching the videos and I was actually looking how that lead tin yellow looks right next to my bismuth yellow. And you know, when you look at them through the camera and in the video, they kind of look similar, but they can't be any more different. I mean, lead tin yellow is very, very bright, but very opaque. It has a ton of body. Obviously, the body that's associated with any paint that has lead in it. But it's actually very, very different from bismuth yellow. Bismuth yellow, yes, it is bright. It is far more saturated than lead tin yellow. It is not as opaque. Obviously, it doesn't have that body, even though it has a really good body for one of those yellow greens that I always kind of yearn for. So it does lend itself to model. You can model with it. You can push paint around, and it does feel kind of stiff and strong under the brush. But again, very different. Very, very different from lead tin yellow. But I was actually just surprised how similar they looked when I was rewatching the videos. At a glance, they almost look like the same color, which is very, very weird. Yesterday, I sometimes have plans on what I'm supposed to do with a painting. And in my mind, a painting is going to go in a very particular direction. And then, the moment I start painting, I'm like, oh my God, this is clearly not going to go as planned. And I have to think on my feet and I have to say, okay, let's readjust. Let's try to do a painting with the variables that I'm dealing with, at that moment. I have to recognize very quickly the nature of how that very specific paint behaves, and the part that it's going to play with the other colors that are in the palette. That's the super important part. It's not just about recognizing what one color is. It's about also recognizing how it's going to interact with the rest of our colors. That's why I'm trying to keep my other colors as a constant. I could add more colors to the palette depending on what colors I'm going to quote unquote replace white with, but that doesn't really make sense. What I'm trying to do by keeping my regular palette constant is to say, okay, where would this color kind of find its place within my palette, and what would its role be? And that's what happened yesterday. I think the coolest part was that if I wanted to put that color again instead of white, which means that it would also play the role of the lightest color in my palette, I quickly recognized that my Cad Red would compete with that color in terms of value. And I said, well, if that color that I'm replacing white with is actually going to be darker than another color in my palette, I might as well not use that lighter color. In that case, it was the brighter and more saturated Cad Red. So it wasn't my palette because I'm not going to take it out of my palette. So I just left it there. I didn't touch it. But I realized, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be tough because now I have a transparent color in that Azo Green Gold. I'm sorry, I don't know the name. I have a transparent color there. I have another transparent color with alizarin crimson. I have another semi-transparent color with that cobalt ultramarine, and I have a color that's not quite opaque. I don't really think of raw umber as being super opaque. So the painting was just like, hey, this is a very transparent palette. The nature of it begs to be treated as a vehicle for a transparent painting. So as soon as I recognized that, I was like, yep, that's it. I now have to use the brightness of my substrate. I now have to say, yeah, I'm going to work within these darker values, but because the colors are transparent, it would be kind of dumb of me to say, I'm going to neglect the brightness that can be achieved by the filtering of that light surface through those transparent colors. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, yep, that's it. This is it. That's the painting that I have to do. Very strange color. Like I said, I'm very curious because I think I just tapped into that transparent aspect of that green gold, but I'm very curious to see how it would mix with, let's say, white and my reds, white and alizarin, white and Cad Red, because I think that it would cancel them, very nicely, but there's a hint of that gold, that yellowish kind of tint in that green that I think would show up in those mixes, probably making them a bit more orange, towards the orange hue. And I think that would be super interesting to see. Again, this color was suggested by Keita Morimoto, and he is tremendous. I didn't say that yesterday, but he is an amazing colorist. I mean, the colors in his paintings, and I've been super lucky to see his paintings in real life. The colors in his paintings are like crazy, beautifully saturated. I mean, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how his colors look so damn fresh. My paintings, they look like fossils right next to his. So I paint dead paintings and his paintings are alive. I'm totally fine with that. It's just that I'm always kind of shocked when I see somebody who paints with such beautiful saturation, and somebody like Keita who's in such control of that saturation, how far I am from being able to access that chroma in my painting. Again, it's not that probably I'm not capable of doing it. It's just that my sensibility lies elsewhere. And when I see that, I celebrate it because I realize, wow, this painter is so different from myself, so different from what I do that I just wouldn't be able to do this. That's why we have to celebrate, those people that think differently from us, that have different sensibilities, that have different beliefs, because that produces a different painting, and it can be a wondrous painting. So they are doing something that we can't. And for that reason alone, we have to be so grateful and happy that those people, play a part in painting, because it only makes painting richer, as a whole. So I tried to use that color. I'm only using a tiny aspect of that color, but I had a blast, and I thought it was a very nice homage of a portrait. It gave me time to think about a wonderful artist that is Louise Bourgeois, and I was very happy with the painting yesterday. It's a very tender painting, very fragile painting to paint, because it's not easy to wipe out painting. I did kind of wipe out with my brush a little bit, but it's not easy with a paper because the fibers of the paper are going to suck that paint very quickly. So because the absorption is so quick, it kind of tints the paper. So you can't really go back to the brightness, the original brightness of the paper. It is tough. It is very tough. Your drawing has to be, if not spot on, you have to be very close to what you want to do, just so that you don't struggle so much, because that type of painting has a tendency to get very dirty very kind of unorganized if you don't really find your way quickly, if you don't really know what you're doing. So I was scared throughout the whole painting, honestly, but I think it ended up really nicely. So I was glad that I gave myself the chance to do something that's inherently different from what I usually do with my opaque paint, where I just add and add and add paint on top. So I was happy about that. Now for today, I wanted to do something completely different because, first of all, we've been doing yellows, and I've been talking about yellows for what it seems to be like 2 years now. So I wanted to cut that, and I wanted to say, okay, I need for this painting to not have yellow. I don't want to deal with yellow hue. Not that there's anything wrong with it, obviously, but I just wanted to, push myself towards a totally different direction. So what I did was I said, okay, what if we replace that titanium white with King's Blue? And what if we don't touch that yellow? What if we just think of this painting as being King's Blue, Cad Red, which made a comeback, Alizarin Crimson, Cobalt Ultramarine, and Raw Umber. It was obviously going to be a very, very tight palette. We were not really going to deal with yellows. I mean, we could make some yellowish, brownish hues just by mixing some of that Raw Umber and that King's Blue. That Raw Umber tends to have some yellow in there. It tends to have some green in there. So I was like, yeah, if there's going to be some sense of yellow hue, of yellowness in this painting, it's going to be insanely subtle. I mean, it's barely there. You have to be very sensitive to tiny changes in shift and how color actually appears to look like to just see those hints during the painting. But it's obvious that the painting was going to be more about the blue hue, blue-gray, a violet hue, and a red hue. I was like, yeah, that's where I'm going to move. That's what the painting is going to be about. And because I was immediately accepting of the fact that that was going to be the palette, I was like, yeah, we have to make an expressive painting. This won't really make sense if we are not using like the rest of the palette, but we're using this kind of analogous side of the palette with the blues and blue violets and reds. If we're going to use that part of the palette, then yeah, it's totally going to be expressive. Let's just make this a little bit weird. And I decided that the wholeness of the light was going to be understood by my lightest color, which was going to be King's Blue. King's Blue, by the way, is kind of a cheat because, and that's why I said it yesterday, because it's actually like a pre-mixed color if you want to think about it. It's not one pigment, it's actually a white pigment, it's titanium white mixed with cobalt blue. So, there is going to be technically, if we want to be technical about it, there is some white in there. What we've done is just pre-mix it with cobalt blue. We are cheating today, but, it is a color. It is an accessible color. It is a color that a ton of people use. Jeremy Lipkin uses this color, and Sean Cheetham uses this color. So it's a very useful color when you don't want to go, for that chalky, very bright, very, very light titanium white, for example. So a lot of people like Jeremy and Sean, they actually use it in their mixes to try and lighten their mixes, which sounds very, very weird because it is a blue and it's going to make things a little bit grayer, but it seems to work. For Sean, for example, it works wonderfully. So, it's kind of like magic when he uses it, because when I see King's Blue, I immediately think of doing a painting like the one I'm doing of Samu today. It's like his face is blue, period. But when you put it with a broader palette, and when you just think of it as this agent of coolness that's going to make everything just also a little bit lighter, it kind of makes sense. It's actually a very sensitive color. So it's really quite magical in the way certain people, certain painters use it. But again, I don't use it that way. I would just see it as a light blue. And for the purpose of this exercise, in trying to say, well, if we replace that white with a color that has such a character, even though it has white in it, the hue of it is just throwing you on such a different direction that it's almost impossible not to see it and think of blue and say I have to paint a blue painting if this is going to be my lightest color. Blue is going to be incredibly important in every single mix. But that's the thing also. I didn't want King's Blue in every single mix because I've been kind of doing that in the past couple of paintings. It was far more evident with Bernadette's painting on Tuesday, where that bismuth yellow was just everywhere. I was mixing bismuth yellow with every single color that was in my palette. And I was making the bismuth yellow dominant. So it was obviously going to be a yellow-green painting. There was no doubt about it. There was no way to get out of that. And the painting became atmospheric because that was the very nature of the mixing. I could have tried that today, but I was like, no, I want to have different areas of the painting. I want a grayer, blue-gray background, kind of earthier background in some areas. I want this dark blue-violet shape, very rich shape, kind of abstract geometric shape that is Samu's hoodie. I want the face to be that blue, and I knew I wanted to have some color, some accent of color in the laces, those very thick laces that are part of this weird hoodie. I wasn't sure of how to paint them. That's why I postponed the solving of those very, very kind of thick shapes. Eventually, I was incorporating some Cad Red to the profile to try and kind of ground the drawing in that profile. And the relationship between the King's Blue and Cad Red just gave me a really nice sense of vibrancy. And I realized very quickly that it was working. And I was like, well, I could echo some of that Cad Red that I'm using for the accents of drawing in the portrait. And I could just bring it to these, weird laces, to these weird shapes of these thick laces and say, yeah, that's going to be my kind of strange, abstract, high chroma accent in this painting. So it's going to be very blue, not necessarily very King's Blue. There's going to be different kind of moments of blueness in this painting that don't necessarily point to King's Blue constantly. And it was cool because the moment I introduced that King's Blue and I make it this very important kind of bullseye of the painting, then it seems special. It seems important. I was very scared to put that Cad Red because by putting that Cad Red there, I was actually thinking that it was going to compete with the portrait, with the King's Blue, but it actually didn't. It seemed to work nicely and play off nicely. I was like, yeah, it has a very strange balance, I guess, this painting, but it seems to work. And I was very happy about it. I was like, if it's hinting at these very strange relationships that don't necessarily have to just be this tender, loving relationship, but there's a little bit of friction between those two colors, that's perfectly fine. Not all paintings are meant to be just analogous and harmonious. Sometimes there's this tiny bit of screeching between the two colors. There's like a tiny bit of dissonance that can work, wonderfully and can work beautifully. And I think that those two colors kind of found a way to co-inhabit the painting. And I thought that that was wonderful, that I gave myself the chance to say, yeah, I don't really paint this way. But this painting is so, in a way, kind of flat and abstract and strange that, why not? Why not give myself the chance and say, yeah, let's solve it this way. And it was fun. It was great. I mean, it was obviously so different that I wasn't really missing the role that titanium white or, lead white or a white would play in a regular palette, because the part of the palette that was activated was just so strange and so very different and so far from what I usually do that my mind immediately was like, okay, we're doing something else. We're doing something new, something entirely different. So I wasn't trying to hold on to these branches that gave me like a sense of security. I was like, yeah, we're doing something else. Like, let's just enjoy it. So I think that this newfound kind of courage and liberty is probably going to spill to tomorrow, where I'm going to try something different. I found this weird, ugly ass color. I'm sorry that I have to portray it like that, to define it like that, but you're going to see it tomorrow, and it's going to be a tough color to paint with, but I'm very interested into what I'm going to do with this color. And I think that instead of trying to paint something again that speaks about unity, I'm going to be comfortable to just, kind of rip everything apart and just separate stuff. And I think that's going to be pretty cool. So we'll see how we do tomorrow, but that's going to be tomorrow. So I'll see you guys later. Thanks. Bye.